Welcome everyone. I hope you're enjoying TechEd so far. My name is Jean-Pierre Simonis. I'm really happy to be here presenting at TechEd again. I'm the team leader for Identity, Messaging and Security at Data3 and Microsoft VTSP and Identity and Access. With me today is Bruce Smith, who's a solution consultant in the identity space as well.
Hello.
So we'll be talking about identity management and orchestration and self-service in the data center. So we're going to quickly go, what we're trying to achieve in this session is have an understanding of what identity management is, who are the players, why do we need it, what tools we can use, and we're going to go through an example of a solution that we're currently working on and show the integration between FIM, Orchestrator and Service Manager. And then we're going to go through some self-service orchestration scenarios that are pretty common during the identity lifecycle. And then we're going to quickly touch on some cloud integration subjects and open it up to questions. So, identity management. What is it? Well, an identity is a summary of information about a person, group, or resource that you want to store. So, a first name, a phone number, or an email address. Identity management is a set of technologies intended to streamline the management of user identity information inside and outside your enterprise. And this can include user directories, user provisioning, password management, federation, enterprise single sign-on, and web application single sign-on. And this leads into identity access management, and that's a shared platform with consistent processes for managing information about users. So who they are, how they authenticate, and what they can access. So typically, identity management, you have a lot of manual processes and a lot of decentralized systems. And that leads to a lot of identity stores. So in an enterprise, you have a complex mix of infrastructure. So network operating systems for files and printers, applications, email, collaboration platforms, user directories, and a variety of line of business applications. And on top of all those systems, there's many different types of users that use those systems. So we have employees, contractors, partners, vendors, and customers. So with an IDM solution, you get to centralize that logic and then automate that across those systems, allowing you to provide automated provisioning and deprovisioning, account, group, and mailbox management, provide self-service to your end users for group management, password reset, and for your administrators, provide some workflow, notification, approvals, and some reporting. So who are the players? So in an enterprise, when you're deploying lots of your ever-growing infrastructure, it gets harder and harder to manage the identities and security permissions for those systems. So we have human resources that manage the HR systems. You have IT operations that do your provisioning, deprovisioning, and your ongoing support. Security operation that do your reporting and compliance. Your managers that do workflows and approvals, and your end users. So why do we need it? So the common challenges during the identity lifecycle is, for example, in the onboarding phase, there are a lot of delays and issues with getting end user productivity. When they start on the first day, not being able to do the job because they're still waiting on IT operations to provision their user account once they've got their ticket. And there's a lot of redundant administration, so provisioning that same identity across multiple systems. In the manage phase, so when the user transitions roles within in an enterprise, the same delays that you get from your onboarding occur, and a lot of redundant administration, making those same changes to those attributes across those systems. And then during the support phase, IT operations have to support all your forgotten passwords, intruder lockouts, and access denied errors. And then offboarding, so when you deprovision a user, making sure you actually deactivate a user when a user leaves, and making sure it's complete, so they're deactivated across all the systems in an environment, and making sure it's done in a timely manner, so to reduce the window that the account is available from when a user leaves. So the benefits. So we get to consolidate that identity information into a single point, and for consistency, and that also reduces IT operations overhead by providing automation and reducing the reducing the need for human intervention, and providing self-service to the end users, and reducing the load on at the IT help desk. There's improved user productivity through automation because the users will be able to do what they need to do on the day that they need to do it. Improved network security and compliance through increased visibility, and the application of business rules through automation, and attestation and reporting. So making sure that the users only have the rights they need to do their job. So what tools can we use? So within the Microsoft stack, we have a Forefront Identity Manager that allows us to connect multiple systems together. And with the use of Behold, you can do user profiling and attestation with that. Service Manager is to provide service management and data warehousing and provide us richer reporting functionality. And System Center Orchestrator that gives us deep integration into our enterprise systems through the use of PowerShell, Active Directory, and .NET extensibility. So we're going to go through an example of a project that we've been currently working on at the Education Queensland. And it's very small, and we're going to go through this. And the scope of it is for 750,000 users and 3,000 administrators that manage those users. So what solution components did we use? Well, we used a custom user interface, FIM 2010, custom activity, Orchestrator, Service Manager, and PowerShell. So what does it do? Well, it's a self-service orchestration. It provides self-service orchestration for on-site support staff to provide role-based administration activities. So through the custom user interface, those activities are presented to school support staff, then gets handed off to FIM. Through workflows are run across that, and then presented to Orchestrator. PowerShell and Orchestrator runbooks then action those activities against those enterprise systems, and then all gets reported into the Service Manager data warehouse. So the benefits. So it's it reduced operational costs. So they're managing 3,000 school administrators and we're also improving security by reducing the amount of tools and delegation of security to those end users, and increased visibility because we can provide end-to-end reporting. And the platform is very extensible through PowerShell, .NET, and Orchestrator. So why did we choose the platform? Education Queensland have a significant investment in Forefront Identity Manager, so we're leveraging existing skill sets. We're replacing an end-of-life product that provided a similar functionality. So it now, with using the modern technologies and PowerShell, it's very supportable and extensible. It's a centralized deployment, so it also reduces the complexity of solution. And through the rich reporting that we provide, it's completely auditable, and it provides end-to-end reporting. So I'm going to switch over to Bruce, and he's going to go through and demonstrate the solution for you.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. So I'm just going to flick across to the demo machine. So we can see here, this is the common, or the customizable user interface that JP's been talking about. So what this interface is designed to do is to allow a school administrator to be able to log into the system and perform a number of tasks that normally you would have to have elevated permissions to perform. But these users are pretty much just a general domain user account. They have no extra permissions, but they need to do things like move computer accounts in the Active Directory, move files around a file system, action user objects, enable them or disable them, and do a whole myriad of other tasks. But we didn't want to give those users extra permissions. So we've designed this interface to offload the task that needs to happen through to other services, eventually through to Orchestrator, and the Orchestrator server actually executes the tasks on behalf of the user. And throughout the whole system, we actually log everything as we go. So we're logging from the very first time you log into the system here, right through to the completion of the activity. So you can see here that I'm logged in here as myself, and I can see on the left-hand side a whole series of different activities that the support administrators at the school can perform. So they can do things like provision computers, block access to students' home drives if they no longer need access to them, do activities on groups, and so on. So what I'm just going to show you here is how this system will enable a disabled account in one of the schools. Okay, so I've logged in as as my account. I'm a bit more privileged than most, so I can actually see all of the activities that are available in the system, but most school administrators won't see all of the activities. It's only the ones that they're allowed to do. So I'm going to click into the user services. I'm going to enable or disable a user, which is then going to show me the information I need to provide to the system to make this action happen. Now, in the old system, it was not a centralised system like this one is here, so they had to log into each separate system, so they would have to have a different account in the different systems if they had multiple permissions required. But through our system here, we only wanted to have a centralised interface. So we need to choose what school that this user account needs to be enabled in. So I need to choose through to the district and the appropriate school. Now this user only has access to a small number of schools. So in this region here, in this district of Queensland schools, there are a lot more schools than that showing up, or there are a lot more schools than that in the system. But this user only has access to see these two schools because it's the only schools that he's allowed to perform any actions on. So we query into FIM to determine what schools this user has permission to get. So I'm then going to choose the school that the user is that I want to enable, and excuse me, I'm going to enable the user, and it will show me here, again by doing an Active Directory query, straight to the school, and it will show me any of the disabled users that are currently in that school. I can then click on the user, and press submit. So that there is all the actions that the administrator has to do to enable the account at the school. So we can see, where are we? We can see here that this user here, which was, I think you can see it's very small, Sean Duncan, that is actually a disabled user, and in a few moments that user will become enabled. Now, because we've built this system to be it's
a scalable system. So we have a lot of front ends. We have a polling service that connects to a database that collects the submitted activities and then actions them on a regular interval. So it just takes about a minute for it to collect that activity.
So that polling service is there so we can load balance the system across multiple front ends, and we also use it for authorization. So some of these jobs require that a principal or a senior staff at the school has to authorize that this action can take place. There are some actions that may take a week or so to run. Like at the end of school year, they have to move everyone's file directories and stuff to different locations on the file servers. So they may take a week to run. So these principal or the senior staff have to authorise that to happen. So we need the logging service there or the polling service to enable us to do that. So when the action starts, which hopefully it will very soon, there we go, we can see that the request has been approved. So that's approved the request, and this will then forward the request onto FIM. FIM will forward that request onto Orchestrator, and we can see here that we've got a start notification. So that tells me that this activity has started, and we're about to kick off the activity on the school system itself. And then we can see that it's finished, and we have a success notification. So if I come back to Active Directory, I can now see, and refresh the screen, I can now see, if you're lucky, that that user account has now been enabled. Now, the system is designed again to log everything that happens. So we log, as I said, from when you start clicking in the user interface all the way through to that last email coming back to me saying it's been successful. So we have, to do that, we use the Service Manager data warehousing. Let me just find the screen, and this is our reporting system here. So I'm going to click on show me all the executions from all the users that have happened, and I'm going to all the activities that have happened today. So I need to choose today's date and tomorrow's date, view a report, and it's going to show me everything that's happened today. So at 1:59, the enable or disable user account activity was run, and we log either information or verbose logging. So, sorry, we log everything that happens, but we can only display, if you only want to see, okay, was that action successful, or what were the major steps that happened, we can look at the information logging, and it will just show you very high level what happened to that job. Or, well, you're going to the same one, sorry, I went back too far. Bring that back up. Or we can have a look at the verbose logging, and the verbose logging is going to show me everything that actually happened through that time that I started clicking through the custom user interface right through to the action happening on the server itself. So we can see here there's a lot of information. That's the activity starting. This is all the information that's being passed from the custom user interface through to FIM, from FIM through to Orchestrator into a PowerShell script, launching the activity on the server at the school, and all that information is coming back to our centralised data warehouse. So we can see all those activities there, right through to a status of a successful completion. So that's what we can do without my user account having any special permissions other than having access into the custom user interface. I have no other permissions in the domain at all. Pass that back to you.
Yep. So we're going to quickly talk about the integration points within this solution. So what did we have available to us? We had the Web Services API in FIM, Orchestrator, and Service Manager, so we could programmatically talk to those interfaces. We had FIM management agents that allowed us to talk to Active Directory, LDS, SQL, Notes. You can see that Azure is there. So there is Azure FIM management agent, but it's currently in beta and on the Connect website at the moment. Web service, and there's a lot more. Orchestrator runbooks, the ability to use PowerShell, .NET, the standard runbook activities, and the Orchestrator integration packs that are available from the community and third parties. And FIM custom activities that allow us to extend the capability of FIM workflows. So we're going to go back and just talk about the nuts and bolts of how the products interact with each other.
Okay, so the custom activity is written in ASP, and it actually does a lot of querying back to FIM. So all these activities you see on the left-hand side here, I think there's 41 of them, I think there is. Each one of those activities is actually created in FIM. So we've extended the FIM schema to create these activities, and in those activities we store all the configuration about all of these activities. So no one has to know anything about how this front end is actually coded, because all the configuration is stored within FIM itself. So the Department of Education have a very large team that looks after FIM, and they have full understanding of how the RCDC components work and how they need to update and work along with these custom activities. So it's quite easy for them to be able to create new activities. If something, they come up with a new operation that these school administrators have to do, they can go into FIM and create a new activity, upload the information into FIM, and it will automatically flow through to the custom user interface. So when we click on one of these activities, and I'll show you the enable or disable one again, that information there that shows in the middle of the screen, again, that comes from FIM. So we create an XML file that gets uploaded into the activity object, sorry, and that stores all the information about what we need to show on the screen here. So again, you don't need to understand how it's coded. You just need to know how to create the XML file and then upload it into FIM. And every time one of these entries here is clicked on, again, that there is another query into FIM to determine what I need to show next. So FIM not being very dynamic in showing us information on the screen, this gets around that limitation where we can actually query FIM and find out all the information we need and show it on the screen dynamically. And again, we use FIM through the custom activity, through the custom user interface, for permissioning. So we only see here on the screen what the administrator's got access to see. Okay, and we use FIM to do all that as well. Is there anything else you want to add?
No, that we're good.
Okay, so excuse me. When we click submit, again we explain the polling service. So what we do when we click submit is we actually send an entry into a database. The polling service every minute or so reads into the database and collects the information that's there, determines whether we need to do any authentication on it or whether it needs to be authorised by anybody, and then that polling service then sends it on to FIM. So internally in FIM, we create, when I find it, an orchestration ID, or an orchestration object. So this object, again, we've extended the schema of FIM, and we create this object that contains all the information that you've entered in on the form in the custom user interface. All that information gets stored in FIM, and we can then process that.
So it's basically a staging object. So, yep.
Yeah, sorry. Yep. So yes, we store all the information in here. We give it a unique name so that we can come back and reference against that through the reporting services. We store the runbook name. Now we'll get into what Orchestrator does for us in a second, but the runbook name obviously is vital because that's the PowerShell script that gets executed on the server and does the appropriate task for us to do. And then we have the requesting user, which again we need because we needed to have end-to-end reporting and end-to-end auditing of what happened. So this will store who executed the command on the custom user interface and flow that through all of our systems. So we can have full reporting on what that user's been doing. So we can look at all the activities that all the users have been doing, or we can drill down on one particular user. So we can see if something broke and something didn't happen the right way, or they did something they shouldn't do, we can actually see what user did it and what action actually happened. So again, we've built this to work with the project that we've been working on, but yeah, this is going to be around for, well, hopefully a number of years. So we didn't know, currently now we work with about 10 parameters per job that gets launched in the system. But who knows, down the track there may be activities that they need to run that we need to publish a whole heap more information into the system. So we've designed it to work with currently 30 different parameters, and these parameters could be anything from a username, a group name, a file server name, a share name, anything like that. We actually don't know what these are going to be used for, and you don't need to know what they're going to be used for because it's the PowerShell script that's going to interrogate those objects to determine what we need to do with them. So we've built it to be extensible, to hopefully be a bit more future-proof, so that down the track they just add the activities in and everything just works. Right.
Yep. So once the object's created, we kick off. We have for simplicity, we only have one workflow. So when a new object is created, it kicks off our custom workflow, which then kicks off our custom activity, which does the handing off to Orchestrator. So Bruce
So I'll just bring up the custom workflow. Now this custom workflow is written in C#, and it was developed by myself, and I'm definitely not a coder, but it's with the help of a lot of there's a good FIM community out there, and there's a lot of help around how to create these custom activities. So I'm pretty much thinking if I can do it, then probably most of you guys, if you've got a small understanding of coding, would be able to pull a similar sort of custom activity together. So what we do with this is we can actually control the entire process from FIM onto Orchestrator. We can control the entire process from here. We set all the configuration options from this one location. So there's only basically two. Well, this is the main spot that we do all the configuration for this solution. So we can enable or disable the solution from here. So we can turn it on or turn it off. If we need to do some troubleshooting, we can just disable the workflow, so then nothing else is going to happen. We set our logging levels. We can either have no logging, informational logging, or verbose logging. Again, the requirement from the client was that we had to log end to end, we had to audit end to end. So we turn verbose logging on, and we log everything, and we filter it in the reporting services. We can configure the reporting, or the database logging, whether we actually do want to report, do want to turn the logging on. We log, again, I said we log everything, so we actually log to file. on the servers, we log to the event logs on the servers. You can turn that on or off if you only want to log small amounts. And down the bottom down here is all the configuration settings. So where the Orchestrator servers are, where the SQL servers are for the reporting, what are the FIM server names, what are the load balancing server names. And talking about load balancing.
Yeah, so we actually developed our own load balancing solution for Orchestrator as part of this solution. So ordinarily, Orchestrator is deployed in a pool. So when you kick off a runbook, it will automatically pick a runbook server to run that runbook. So, but with education, we have up to 14,000 activities a day that we need to run. So we needed absolute control on which runbook server that we ran activities on. Some of these runbooks could take up to a week to run for the sheer amounts of data that they process. So in our discussions with Microsoft and the customer, it was decided that we would deploy single instances of Orchestrator, so standalone instances of Orchestrator, and then we developed basically a load balancing database that kept track of the Orchestrator servers and all the runbooks that were installed on those servers, so you could have flexibility on where you put the runbooks. And then we put weightings against each runbook, so depending on the load that runbook would generate on a server. And then once that all gets calculated by the custom activity. So before any orchestration happens, the custom activity will interrogate this database, work out the available Orchestrator servers, look at the runbooks that are available, take a look at the weightings, look at the processor and memory thresholds that we've configured in the activity, put a cost on on all the servers that are there, and then work out the most appropriate server to run the Orchestrator runbook on.
Yep. We can also, if we have multiple Orchestrator servers, we can, if we need to take that server into maintenance mode, we can disable that that Orchestrator server from any new workflows that get pushed to it. It'll continue finishing off the current jobs that it's doing. Excuse me. Continue finishing off the current jobs that it's doing, but it won't take any more jobs on. So once those activities are finished, we can then, update the server or do whatever we need to do with it. We can also specify that the runbooks themselves will only run on particular servers. So we don't have to push them across all servers. We can put them on just a small number of servers if that's what we require. So there may be a case where one activity is going to take the full load of the server. So we don't want to push other activities to it. So we can just create that activity running on only that server.
And then using the Orchestrator functionality, we can set concurrency on that runbook. So if another activity of the same type gets pushed to that server, it'll just get queued up behind that. Wait till the existing orchestration job is completed and then start it. The way we've designed this particular activity, it monitors that run job from end to end. So when it is actually completed, it feeds back into FIM and then kicks off an email notification. So it's not just pushed one way and then hope it worked. So it does feed back and check it all.
So when we send the job from FIM to Orchestrator, we are only pushing across two parameters. So we're pushing across the runbook name and we're pushing across, excuse me, the Orchestrator ID, which is the GUID of the orchestration object that was created from the custom user interface. So when the custom user interface submitted the job, it creates the orchestration ID. We get the GUID of that and we pass that to FIM. Now the reason we do that, let me just go to Orchestrator and show you. So this is Orchestrator. So the reason we do that is we only require we need to know what the runbook is we're going to run and what the FIM object is, because we query from Orchestrator back to FIM to collect all the information about the job that we want to run. So there's a limitation with because all the activities that we run are PowerShell based, we need to pass all this information to PowerShell. Now there's a limitation with the size of the parameter, the command line parameters that you can pass to PowerShell. So we may have a situation where every student in a school needs to, so at the end of the year or the start of a new year, all the students in a school need to go up to a next grade. So there could be 1,000 students in that school. We pass the DN of the user to the school, to the activity. So you can imagine the DN might be 70 characters long or more. Times that by 1,000, that's a very long string to try and pass to PowerShell. So what we do is store it in FIM, and then from Orchestrator, we query back to FIM, create an XML file that stores each one of those users in an XML file. So we might have 1,000 lines in the XML file. that we then use the PowerShell script to query the XML file, process the users, put them in an array or whatever we need to put them in, and do the job on them. Okay? So that's why we actually don't need to send much information to Orchestration, because everything is stored within FIM.
Yep. The other reason we do this is FIM is not really designed to do bulk operations, so it's really identity-centric. So if you tried applying activities to individual identities, it would fire off about 1,000 orchestrations for each of those 1,000 users, which would then blow out Orchestrator sizing. So what we ended up doing was from using the custom user interface, collecting all the users that one operation needed to apply to, consolidate that into a staging object, and then pass all that information as a one operation to Orchestrator so we can really control the load and not have to make an oversized solution.
Yep. So these are all the run books that are used in this solution. So if I just quickly flick through a couple of them, you'll notice something fairly quickly about them. They're all exactly the same. So we've built a cookie cutter, basically, to say these configurations are exactly the same. The only difference is which PowerShell script from that server they're actually running. But all that is variabilized or passed from passed from FIM to Orchestrator. So we don't have any hard coding in here to say what the server name is, what the run book is, or anything like that. It's all variabilized, but we need to have individual run books so we know for logging reasons what we're actually doing. So this activity here is where we collect the data, and that creates our XML file. This then runs the PowerShell script, and then we have a cleanup activity. So if the job finishes successfully, we remove any of the staging information about the activity. So from FIM, we'll remove the orchestration object that was created, and from the servers, we'll delete any of the XML files. If they're unsuccessful, that information will stay there, and it will be logged that it was unsuccessful, so that we can go back and actually see, well, we didn't pass the correct information from the user interface to FIM, so that's why it's broken, because there's something there that the script didn't like.
And so education have SCOM monitoring for these errors that we log everywhere, and that will throw up an error and automatically create a ticket in their ticketing system, and then an administrator will then go and have a look and see why an activity failed. It may be that the school server's been powered off, or they lost power, or a network down issue. If there's any type of failure in the solution, the end user that actually kicked off the orchestration gets notified that the job failed. So they don't confused thinking that it didn't actually happen successfully.
So I forgot to show you before, but this is the activity information internally in FIM. So again, here you'll see all the names of the activities, and they'll match up pretty well with the runbook names. So again, if we look at the enable or disable user activity, we can see the information that we need to store about each activity when it comes up. So in here we can see what we call it, whether we require authorization, so whether the users need, whether we need to say yes, the principal has to approve that or not. We can enable or disable the activity.
So that activity might be in maintenance mode because they were making modifications to the script, so we don't want to be kicking the script off while you're making changes to it. Okay. So that activity will just be disabled so they won't even pop up and populate in the user interface while it's being modified. And then
the most important one, what runbook we're going to run. If we get that spelled out wrong, the whole thing doesn't work. And this browse here is where we upload the XML file. Now I won't show you the XML file because that's very small and quite complicated. So we upload the XML file here that has all the controls about what we're seeing on the screen. And then we choose what category of service that you saw in the user interface on the left-hand side, where to put it. And then we have a members tab, which
is automatically populated from, basically we have a management runbook that collects membership of Active Directory groups across the multiple forests for all these school administrators. And that's how they currently manage who has access to what activities from the legacy solution. So we decided to leverage what they're already doing operationally and take that membership and then flow that into a database, and then we flow it automatically into the activities. So they then through their current management process, they can see or show or hide activities.
Yeah. So these are the users here. You can see there, they're the users who actually will have access to look at this activity on the screen. If their name's not listed in there, then they don't see the activity in the custom user interface. They can't select it, so they can't run it. Okay, so that's how we do that. Right. Go back to the deck.
Yep. So, self-service and orchestration. So we talked about the identity lifecycle a little bit earlier. So we're just going to run through some scenarios around creating a new user, when a user changes their position within the business, adding additional employee services, some self-service password reset, and an employee going on long service leave.
Okay. Got it?
I think so.
Yep. Okay, so what we were showing you before was the solution that we've come up for the Queensland Department of Education. So that's a specific scenario on why we would use a custom user interface, why we would use FIM, and why we would use Orchestrator.
And that fits definitely within the manage and support part of the identity lifecycle. So if you're looking at the solution as a whole, I mean, there's a lot of functionality there there's a lot of touching, even though it says zero touch there. There's a lot of functionality there that you could automate without any user interaction, and there's a lot of other FIM instances at that particular customer that do that component of the solution. So this is just a point solution for their 3,000 administrators.
Yep. So we just wanted to show you that, just so you get an idea of you can use all these products to target to a specific problem that you need to solve, and that's what we tried to do with this solution. But we can use. I'm just going to show you now how we can use the same solution to do more common scenarios that you come up on a day-to-day basis, like provisioning a new user, deactivating the user. The user needs an email address and all that sort of stuff. So again, you may not have to go into this complexity to do this. And it doesn't have to be a custom user interface either. It could be Service Manager, self-service portal, integrated with Orchestrator to talk to FIM to do something very similar to what we're doing at the moment. It could be a SharePoint site. It could be an eForm. It could be a lot of different things that could do this type of functionality. Well, we just want to show that as a user who's got no permissions in Active Directory, using these types of tools, we can actually make the more complex activities happen. The stuff that needs the higher permissions and the higher privileges, you can make it happen without having to give those users any specific permissions. They don't have to touch Active Directory. They don't have to touch Exchange. They don't even have to go to the file server to move the files around. This does it all for you. Okay. So what we're going to walk through is just a couple of scenarios. So we have a new user who we want to employ. So again, using this interface, but it wouldn't necessarily have to be this interface, we can create a new account. And we could have a ticket. In most organisations, I mean, if they got a HR system, that could be automated. But in this scenario, let's say we have Service Manager. You get a ticket saying the new user needs to be provisioned. I'm the school administrator, or Bruce is the school administrator here. He's got this ticket. He goes and puts the details of the ticket in, hits submit. And again, we need to wait a minute or so because, again, this is showing it on the system that we developed specifically for debt. It wouldn't normally need to have this complexity, but it's going to create the user, Justin Cook, in the system here. Now, some of you may know the names that I've used, Sean Duncan and Justin Cook. They were actually the guys who developed the initial ZTP solution, so I've just used their names. And one's my boss, and so it's all good. So initially, we still have to wait for the polling service to run, but again, the whole thing will happen where I will get my email to say, yep, there it is, 224, that's right. So that I've got the email to say the activity started. So at some point, I will see an Orchestrator that new account. There we go. I can see that in Orchestrator that activity is kicked off. Now you will notice in here that this runbook is slightly different to the others. That's because this one is not actually part of the ZTP solution that we've done for education. So in here I've been able to actually use some Orchestrator activities rather than just using PowerShell. Now I didn't explain before, but the reason we had to use PowerShell with the DEET solution was that they had a whole bunch of VB scripts that did the solution previously. They needed to be converted to PowerShell. So, and that was part of the requirements of the project, was we had to use the PowerShell scripts to do that. Orchestrator could have done all of the tasks that we needed for us, but they wanted them done in PowerShell. So I'm just showing here that we could do the same sort of jobs in Orchestrator just by using the normal Orchestrator activities to, here I'm creating a user, I'm enabling a user and then enabling the mailbox.
Just with that PowerShell, another requirement for this project was all these activities that happen for the school administrators need to happen at the edge, at the school. So all those PowerShell scripts actually action all of those commands on the edge servers using PowerShell remoting, but still log everything to the central database, keeping our logging centralized.
So we can see there that Justin's account's been created, and I'll just check the Exchange control panel, or admin center it's called these days, and there should be a Justin Cook email address there for him now. So that's now been created. So again, without having any special rights, I've managed to create that account. And another common activity is a user changing roles. So we've got a user here who is a contractor, and a contractor has different permissions to a full-time employee, but this user is now being employed full-time. So he's in a group called All Contractors.
So yeah, we've pre-created two groups here, and they're criteria-based groups. So these criteria-based groups in FIM allow you to base any group on any attribute on an identity that's available within the identity management system. So we're using the identity type field. So if they're a contractor, then make them a member of this group. So you can see that.
So you see there that John is a member of the All Contractors group in FIM, and he's also a member of the All Contractors group in Active Directory. So hard to see, I know, but there he is there, and he's not a member of the All Full-Time Employees group. So that's Janet, someone there who's a member of that group. Okay, so what we're going to do is, again, this wouldn't necessarily happen in FIM, but this could happen from your HR system, pushing data into FIM and saying, okay, this employee is now a full-time employee, but we're just going to simulate that FIM is our HR system or our source of truth. So I'm going to go into John's user account, go to the Work Info tab, and I'm going to change him from a contractor to a full-time employee. I'm going to submit that change. Now, internally in FIM, when that closes, he's now moved into...
You'll have to excuse me, this is running out of a couple of laptops out of my house.
So he's now moved into the All Full-Time Employees group in FIM. So we can see here that he's now a member of that group, and he's no longer a member of All Contractors. But in Active Directory, he's still a member of All Contractors, but he's not a member of All Full-Time Employees yet. We need to run a synchronization to get that information from FIM into Active Directory.
And this is because the FIM portal is just another connected system in FIM. So the FIM portal, FIM has multiple components. There's a FIM synchronization engine, which is the source of truth for identity within the FIM product set. So the FIM portal is where a lot of the rules are defined, the business rules are defined. We just need to synchronize that into the point of truth, and that will flow into other connected systems like Active Directory. So this is usually a scheduled task that's run in the background, and depending on the system you connect into, will change how often that system gets updated. So HR systems maybe once a day, Active Directory maybe once an hour. So we're just going to run through that now. Once that comes back to the prompt, we'll see that the change that we've made in the FIM portal will flow through to Active Directory.
So if I now refresh that and look at all full-time employees, John is now a member of that group. So he's been taken out of the contractors group, added to the full-time employees group. He now only has the permissions that we want him to have. He doesn't have extra permissions because the administrator's just gone in there and said, oh, you're now a full-time employee, and hasn't removed him from the other groups. We've got a common known way of actually managing this user account for that activity. So part of changing his role is also that as a full-time employee, he now gets an email address. So currently, if we look at, again, at Exchange, John does not have an email address listed here. So we can use, in our case here, we're going to use our custom user interface and choose the new mailbox activity. And again, I need to select through all the schools again. And I'm just going to list all the users that are in that school. And there's John there. And I'm going to, this is going to, when I click submit, it's going to enable his account with an email address. I'll give him an Exchange mailbox. So
while that's happening, we'll just we'll go through the example of password reset.
Yep. Okay. So you want to go that one?
So John's forgotten his password, and for time purposes, we're not going to go through the registration process.
So I'll show here that we have registered him for self-service password reset. So part of that process is they must answer a series of 3 questions or 5 questions, whatever it happens to be. With, I think ours was, what's your street name, what's your surname, and
what's your favourite colour?
So he's registered that. He's registered that, so he now tells us he's registered for that, but he's forgotten his password.
And they don't have to be security questions like that either. They could be one-time email passwords and one-time SMS if that's configured. So for validation during the password reset process, you can have that configured as well. So, all right, so we'll just put in John's username in here.
Forgot what he is. So that's lab/John D. Fingers crossed.
And then it's going to then validate that we are actually John.
Maybe.
In a second. Oh, there we go. Thank you, demo gods.
Let's try that again. Please, 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 please. It's taking longer. That's always good. Okay. There we go.
There we go.
So now it's going to ask me, what are your 3 questions? Okay, so what is my mother's maiden name? What's my favourite colour? It's blue today, apparently. And what street did I live on? So I answer those questions. I can click next, and that's now going to reset my password for me. So I can now give it a new password. Click next, and that will reset the password for the user. So he'll now be able to log in to the network. Okay.
Yep.
So while that's been happening, hopefully I've now got an Exchange mailbox for Mr. John Doe, and there we go. So John now has an Exchange mailbox. Again, all without doing any... Yes?
How do you manage approvals? You obviously do that somewhere through...
So there's about... I'll take this one.
Yep.
There's several different ways you can action that. So you can use the FIM approval engine and create workflows and rules around kicking off an approval process. So FIM's got add-ins for Outlook and the FIM portal itself, and using manager attributes or whatever you configure to send to approvals. You could use service manager approvals using the orchestrator integration. So when you kick off an orchestration job in this example, we could put in some of the runbook activities to put an approval process into Service Manager, or another orchestration activity that talks to your Service Desk product to do that kind of approval process. But in this particular scenario, we wrote an approval process in the custom UI, so we could have a unified user interface for the school administrators and the approvers, so they didn't go to 2 different systems. So the way that we do it in this is if an activity requires approval, it goes out and reads the school object that we've got in FIM, looks at the approvers in that school object, sends them a blanket email, first in best dressed, whoever approves it in the web interface, and it hits approve, and then the orchestration job gets submitted to FIM at that point, and then it gets executed. Hopefully that answered that question.
Yep. So the last thing we wanted to show you here is the last part of the process is that this user is going on long service leave. Normally the best practice of that is to disable the account. The account's still going to receive email, but no one's going to be able to log in as that user. No one's going to be able to do anything as that user account. So when he does come back, we know that he's going to be receiving the email that he's had, but we know nothing would have happened with his account. So again, we go through the same process of deactivating the user account, of choosing the user, sorry. Wrong school. And we're going to disable the user account, select the year level, and I'm just going to look for Justin. Click add. Let's show me there's Justin Cook there, and I'm going to click submit. And again, that's going to go through the same process. It's going to go to FIM, it's going to go to Orchestration, it's going to run a run book on the school and deprovision. Well, it's going to disable Justin's account, which we showed you earlier, so I don't think we need to see that again.
No.
So we'll go back to the deck.
All right, so I guess we've got to just quickly talk about what cloud integration options are available for, I guess, this type of solution. So you've got the Azure Management Agent, and that's still not publicly available. Well, it's publicly available through Connect as beta. There are some limitations around it, so you can't actually, you can synchronize identities in complex environments, so multi-forest environments, but no password synchronization as yet. Azure Active Directory, being able to synchronize your on-premise identities into an off-premise identity solution that has a bunch of add-ins to external systems. Active Directory Federated Services to give you claims-based authentication for on-premise web apps. Orchestrator for your enterprise system integration and being able to plug in with the use of PowerShell and Orchestrator management packs, integration packs to talk to Azure and other cloud and future cloud services. The Azure Office 365 DirSync application that for simple environment, single domain, single forest allows you to synchronize your on-premise identities to the cloud with the password hashes. So password sync is available through the Azure DirSync, and more and more features get added to that product every day. And PowerShell. So Azure is fully PowerShell enabled, so you can manage a lot of the Azure functionality just through PowerShell, which works hand in hand with Orchestrator. So, yep. So some of the cool functionality Azure can provide is single sign-on for cloud applications. So if you've got Azure for Active Directory, which you automatically get if you have Office 365, you can turn on over 150 cloud-based applications that you can use your synchronized on-premise identities with, like Google services, Box, Dropbox, Salesforce, Concur for expenses, SkyDrive. And if you're developing applications, you can, with Visual Studio 2013, you can build your applications to authenticate natively against Azure. And the links at the bottom of the deck give you some information about how to do that. So do we have any questions? Yes?
Are you using a separate PIM service from their normal user account management PIM service?
Yes. In this particular scenario, yes. So there are several different FIM instances for different purposes within the organisation.
Was it the same sync engine or were they multiple sync
multiple sync engines.
Okay. Just say what we're trying to show here is that, you know, we get a lot of customers who always are asking us, well, how do we manage our user accounts without giving too many permissions away? So that's what we wanted to show, is that with multiple, well, don't even need to go to the level that we've gone with these products, but we can use other, you know, use means. There's ways and means of doing things that allows a user or an administrator of a network not to have any permissions, but do the high-end jobs that need to be done. So it's one of the common things that we always get is, well, how do I do it? And these are just some ways that we've shown, hopefully, that you can actually do it.
And hopefully reduce the amount of domain admins you guys have in your environments. So
Yeah.
how many people here have less than like 20 domain admins in the domain admin group? Liars.
Well done. Well done. They're all in enterprise admins, aren't they? Yeah. So hopefully you've got something out of that, and you can see that, you know, there's lots of things you can do to help manage all the day-to-day operations. You know, this is not just managing AD. This what we've done here. This solution manages files and folders and shares at the school. So we push all of our data to the school. We don't, when we're copying files to and from servers at the school, we don't want that travelling back across the network. Okay, we make sure we execute these at the school. So we use remote PowerShelling from our core central systems out to the school. We do some remote PowerShelling so that the tasks are run locally at the school. We don't want any data other than our logging data coming back across the link, because some of these schools could be in the middle of Queensland, in the middle of nowhere, okay? And they don't have any good network links.
So the solution components, I mean, we were definitely focused on making sure they were fit for purpose. So we didn't try to hack FIM to make it move folders around. We used products that were designed specifically to do those kinds of tasks. So FIM is good at security and good at managing identities, and that's what we're using it for. And Orchestrator is good at kicking off activities into multiple systems. Yes?
How many resources and how long did that take?
How many resources? You're looking at them? Two,
Oh,
plus,
and dev.
plus one,
Plus a dev.
plus a developer to help us with the web interface.
At the back.
We've been with the design phase and lots of meetings. We've been there since June, and we're rolling into production in the next couple of weeks.
Yep.
What was the data like before you go live with that in terms of the state of the accounts? Because obviously that's going to deliver some consistency. You don't always have the consistency to start with. So
We've been very lucky. I mean, the customer we work for has been using identity management for a long period of time, and they've got a very complicated and very streamlined identity management system. So the data has been very clean. So all the data that we source this information from comes from a single point. So they've got one consolidated directory that we pull this from. So we've been very lucky in that respect.
Yes?
do you provide any reporting back to the schools in the attestation reports?
No, well, the reports you saw, those are the kind of the raw reports that we've got. So we're working, after the solution goes in our optimized phase, we'll be going through and working with the intranet team to create dashboards for managers and for school, which they currently don't have the functionality for at the moment. So their legacy solution has a lot of logging, but there's so much noise they can't actually work out when an activity starts and when it finishes. So with this, because it's all in SQL reporting services, it's all in the data warehouse, that data is there, and they can pretty much do whatever they want with that data. Hopefully that answered your question. Yep.
Sorry.
Yep.
So at any time I can get a picture of what jobs are at what state?
Yes, absolutely. And we've got a report there that tells you what runbooks are running on what server, so a live kind of view of how the environment is running at this particular point in time. So it should all be zero. At
So
the moment.
if that job, for instance, hadn't finished, you would still see where it's up to. So it logs it straight back to the data warehouse, so it's always there. We do it by the GUID that's come out of the object, so we can see exactly what it's up to.
Can the user that's submitted the job see where their jobs are at any time?
Yes. Yeah. Well, they'll know. They'll get the notification saying it's started. They'll get one when it's finished. But if they do want to see where it's up to, they can go into the reporting here and look for their name. They can actually search by their name and find out what they've got running.
Yeah. So, but that functionality will be definitely in the intranet eventually. Greg at the back.
Can this solution apply to other identity services like Novell directory servers, Lotus Notes, all that kind of stuff?
Well, yes, it can. I mean, like FIM has notes. Like if you use the Notes connector, it probably could be a little bit better. But yeah, Notes it has a Novell directory connector, so you can use FIM to do that. But we've built this on top of FIM, so no.
Not this solution.
You could do it. You could do it. Not this particular solution,
No,
but.
I'm also talking about the framework in that, is it extensible to cater for not
You mean to manage identities in Notes and
Yeah, absolutely.
definitely.
So
Yeah.
we have that functionality. So FIM can manage Unix identities and Novell identities and Notes identities and
Well,
SQL tables with passwords in them.
Everything we do in this solution pretty much is at the end is PowerShell. So if PowerShell can talk to if it has got a web API or it's got some way of hooking into it with an API, go for it.
Or .NET.
Do what you
So
want. Yep.
all the .NET framework stuff. And if you could talk to it programmatically, we can
Even with Orchestrator has a lot of those add-on activities. I'm not sure, not being an Orchestrator person, that it has Notes, but if it doesn't, you can just use PowerShell or .NET.
Did you say you used Behold in this project?
No, we didn't use Behold in this particular instance, but Behold is there to provide the attestation and user profiling. Because of the type of users we're storing in the portal, we don't need to run the attestation component. That's in another FIM instance. Well, that will be in another FIM instance eventually in this environment. Yes.
In the end, when action is applied to a user account, is that run under one service account?
Yes.
Yeah, yes. So if you didn't hear that, so yeah, when we do run any activity in this solution, it is run under one service account, and that's why it's so important that we capture from all the components from the web interface who the logged on user was, and then flow that through the entire process, so we can basically watermark the activity with who kicked it off.
I don't know a lot about it, but I heard you have service accounts without passwords. Now, I was just wondering if some products support that, I think.
Yes, the managed service accounts. So that's yeah, managed service accounts. So they work a lot like a computer account in Active Directory with a regular password change, and applications like SharePoint support those.
Does this support that?
We didn't build
We
this on
didn't.
SharePoint, so no. But I guess with a bit more development and the requirements changing, yeah, sure, we could.
Yep.
But at this point, no.
Any more questions?
No, thank you. So if you are interested, Carol Wapsphere's got some great sessions around identity jigsaw tomorrow. And she's done another one, but that'll be available on Channel 9. And service management orchestrator integration, that'll be on Channel 9 as well through
you may have,
Justin
yeah.
Cook and Jeff Cook's presentation. Oh, I salute you.